Hi, everybody, and welcome to this session. We'll give everybody a minute to get logged on. We're going to start precisely at 6 o'clock. We have about 30 minutes we're going to be talking tonight. For those of you who are logged on early, welcome. This session is being brought to you by the South Carolina Education Association. My name is Todd Scholl. I am a professional practice and policy fellow with the SCEA, and we welcome you tonight. So let's give folks just another minute to log in here, and then we'll get started with the discussion. Hope you're doing well tonight. And a few humid-free days. Now we're back to humidity here in South Carolina. All right, it's 6 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started. So again, I'm Todd Scholl with the South Carolina Education Association, and welcome to the session where we're going to be talking about managing anxiety for our educators and support staff who are doing a really difficult job in our public schools under some really tough circumstances. So we wanted to offer this session as a form of support for our educators and support staff tonight. And when I thought about who I would want to bring on to discuss this, the three people that you see here were at the top of the list. And I'm so glad that they said yes. And we decided not to do any extensive bios, but I can tell you they're just amazing people that I've met over the past 5 years doing this work with educators, trying to help them manage stress and anxiety. I want to welcome Techa Smalls-Brown, Kara Lee, and Jelena Popovic, and we'll just go ahead and just dive right in. So obviously, teaching and working in a public school has always been challenging, and that stress and the anxiety has grown over decades. There's lots of research to support that. I won't bore people with. But then you add a pandemic and you add certain policies that are coming down from the State House that are making it even more stressful and challenging. So my question, and we'll start with Techa, what are some strategies that folks can use to help them manage it, and understanding that we can't erase the external conditions that are causing the stress? First of all, that's just lay that out there. We can't. We're trying to do that with the SCEA, but we acknowledge it's tough. But in those circumstances, how can we best manage that stress, given the fact that those conditions are tough right now?
Yes, thank you, Todd. And thank you for this space and this platform to talk about this. It's so important. I just think that educators right now, we all have to realize first and foremost that we're human. And sometimes we forget that. And I know we wear our capes and we're superheroes and we do great things. But at the end of the day, we have to remember that we are human beings and not just human doings. And we have families and we have a life and we have things that we need to nurture ourselves in order to bring the best we can to the work that we do. So it's important that educators during this time just realize and know that you're not alone in this. And there's so many people that stand with you. There's a lot of support there, and our educators and our schools, our school staff, and just support staff, everyone should know that you don't have to suffer in silence alone. There's a lot of mental health supports, and there are other agencies and organizations that are in place to help you. So don't be afraid to reach out for help. And we're all struggling right now. We're doing the very best that we can. So I just want us to remember that. And it's sometimes very hard because we're going through every day and we're trying to get through the day. But just remember, one day at a time, I like to say one breath at a time, and reach out.
Thank you, Techa. Kara, what are your thoughts?
I would probably say a lot of the same things that Techa said, although I would add just really naming the self-compassion piece of it and recognizing that oftentimes when we're in a place of challenge or struggle, we feel like we are the only ones. And certainly within the pandemic and the COVID situation that we're in, we recognize we're not the only ones. But then I think the flip side is we feel like we're the only ones that are not dealing with it well. And everybody else looks like they're dealing with it so much better. And just allowing ourselves that opportunity to say, this is really hard. this is really challenging. I'm going to have good days. I'm going to have bad days. And I am still capable of doing the best that I can with what I have at my disposal right now. So I would just say a lot of self-compassion, and also, as much as possible, seeking connection with others, finding those that are in similar situations, like your cohort or your coworkers, administrators who are supportive, but also seeking connection with those that are outside of the education field to kind of help you remember that it's not all just within those four walls. And laughter is always, to me, key. So anything that you can find that promotes some lightness of spirit and joy is huge for me in getting through a day, even if that means that I look up the dog shaming videos, right? Like those are my personal favorites, all the dogs that get shamed. So
yeah,
those kinds of things.
Thank you, Kara. How about you, Jelena?
Thank you, Todd, for this invitation. Much what Techa and Kara Lee have said, I just want to emphasize the word community that I have heard both of them share. And I just want to underline, circle it, highlight it, that, you know, it's the common humanity for all of us experiencing this. And the more we come together in community to share both the anxieties, fears, and the joys, we can get through this. And particularly, I want to invite educators to orient towards joy, actually, and savor moments of joy when that presents, instead of dwelling in anxiety, just orienting towards, just like the flowers in the background, orienting towards beauty and joy.
Thank you. So I want to talk about some specific techniques. All of us who are here on this call, we've met through work in mindfulness. Jelena's worked with Mindful Schools. I know Kara has done so much work in that field, and she's done a lot of training with trauma-informed practices, and Tisha's worked with the Omega Institute and has done some amazing work in her area. And so I want to talk about mindfulness. I think we'd be foolish not to bring that up as a technique that folks can investigate and explore. One of the things that happened to me, the way I came to mindfulness, was because I was experiencing so much anxiety. I actually was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder about 15 to 20 years ago, and found out about mindfulness. And at first I was very skeptical as to whether it would work or not. And then as I continued to practice and learn more about it and understood the science behind it, I started to recognize exactly how mindfulness was effective at reducing my anxiety. And it had a lot to do with, I wasn't being intentional about how I was thinking. So I had all these thoughts that would come up that were worries or concerns and fears that I was having, whether it was something that had happened during the day that I was just thinking and perseverating on, or something that might happen tomorrow or later this week that I was worried about and just couldn't let those thoughts go. And maybe it's not even about letting the thoughts go, but allowing the thoughts to just exist and be without them dragging you away. And what I think mindfulness does, and I'd love for you guys to comment on this, what mindfulness did for me is it helped me to see that process. It slowed the process down, helped me see how the thoughts that were being generated in my consciousness would drag me away. And when they would drag me away from the present moment, I would spiral into negative emotional states, and the fear was generated, and that stress response was repeated over and over again. And that's a miserable feeling day to day. And I think a lot of teachers are experiencing that, whether it's stress over something that happened from the day that they can't let go of, or anticipatory anxiety over what's about to happen. So we'll go to Techa and talk about, how was mindfulness for you? How was that effective for you? And what are some thoughts or some ways that you think that folks can approach those practices that'll be effective?
Yes, and I can just say that without my mindfulness practice, I don't know how I would be making it through this time every day. I'm so grateful. I teach meditation once a week at a local studio here in Charleston, and I always say how grateful I am to have come to mindfulness. But for people that are new to it, and like Todd said, it can be almost debilitating and you feel like there's no way out. But I always say to myself that I'm not my thoughts. And we have to, if we just say that, I am not my thoughts. This thought is happening right now, but I am not that, depression or the anxiety or the fear. I am not that. That is happening right now. And just addressing it that way and know that this is not who I am. Our true self is what we have to come to. And sometimes, it will take just spending a few minutes and just closing your eyes. I mean, there's so much now, and I'm grateful that people are coming to the practice now more. I mean, with all the apps and what's on Netflix and the Headspace and everything, those are accessible to people. And I really think that if you can take advantage of those more and start incorporating those in our day, daily, even if it's just 5 minutes or 2 minutes or just, closing the eyes. At school, I wear a pin on my lanyard that says breathe. And when people see it, they're like, oh, sometimes we forget to just breathe, so there's a lot of ways you can access it.
Beautiful. Kira?
I think one of the things that you had mentioned earlier was the uncertainty of this year. And I heard someone talk about how uncertainty is a container for anxiety. And so oftentimes education is very future-based in that we have these checklists and these standards and these expectations of where we are going to get the kids, and not knowing what's going to happen with our school year makes it that much harder to feel like you have any kind of control or autonomy or power. So the mindfulness to me is about recognizing when I'm having a particularly juicy thought. And by juicy, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's particularly nutritious, right? It's just gotten its hook in me. And I may be so downstream with that anxious thought or the rumination of what I could have done differently that I fail to recognize I am not in that actual location, right? And we talk a lot about how our brains don't differentiate between real and perceived threats. So if I am caught in a thought that's not actually happening, my body isn't necessarily going to know that. It's not going to make that differentiation. So the mindfulness is not necessarily to me about emptying myself of thoughts or never having those thoughts. It's recognizing more quickly that I have been caught by that thought and having that opportunity to take a breath and to say, okay, but this is where I am right now. So Techa talks about how she's got the pin on her lanyard that says breathe. And when I was a classroom teacher, I just had a big picture of a pause button laminated and on the corner, and on one of my walls. And that was my reminder. That was my symbol that whenever I saw that, to just take a deep breath and to say, okay, this is where I am right now. So it wasn't even about sitting on a cushion or setting aside time or feeling like I had to add something to my schedule. It was literally about how can I incorporate this into my daily existence so that I can just touch into where I am right now and recognize that this is where I am in that fullness of being.
Great. Jelena?
Yeah, to me, it's really interesting that actually mindfulness does not help. And I'm speaking from my experience with management. What mindfulness helps is with meeting the difficulty. So instead of managing anxiety, is actually meeting that anxiety and meeting it very gently and compassionately, and actually with a sense of, sometimes it's overwhelming, so we can't be with that. So we just need to know how to titrate, basically, between what we are skillful in doing and where we need support. But we need to recognize first where does anxiety show up in my body? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Can we actually sit with it and draw it, perhaps, and or write a word? And so for me, it's actually meeting it. And the more compassionately I can meet it, the more I can be with that, and the more I can notice, oh, here is anxiety, here are those thoughts coming. Oh, I'm thinking, I love what Techa said, like, I'm not that thought. To be able to know that, we need to sit and know that, we need to touch the ground and really feel our body when our body is in non-anxious state, and feel our body when it's an anxious state, and see, whoa, that's a difference. So investigating, for me, it's mindfulness is about investigation, kindness, and just meeting everything.
I'm so glad you made that point, Jelena, because I was thinking about after I titled this and we created the graphic and it was managing anxiety, I was like, because I remember when I first was having really serious issues with anxiety, and my first thought is, how do I get rid of this? How do I tackle this? How do I fight this? And it wasn't until I read this book about anxiety and it said, that's kind of like our natural instinct is to resist it and to want it to just go away. And they use the metaphor of like one of those finger traps, that the more you tug and pull at it and resist it, the more energy you're actually giving it. So I appreciate that point of, a lot of times when we have a problem, our mindset is, all right, how do I fix this? How do I get rid of it? And with anxiety, it's really about, not really about that confrontational mentality or trying to get rid of it. It's about, like you said, investigating it and allowing it to exist, and then learning to work with it existing and not dragging us, as deeply into those spirals and so forth. And for me, what mindfulness did is it helped me short circuit that process. It didn't eliminate the anxiety, but it helped me sort of recognize when I was headed in that direction. And so, like you said, it's about witnessing the process. And then I think once you build that awareness of where that anxiety is coming from, which is really a lot from your thoughts about what's happening to you, it kind of naturally starts to diffuse. But if you attack it, then it's not gonna work. So I want to ask this question because I'm guessing that some of the folks watching, because I've heard this comment before, when we talk about things like mindfulness and breathing, and we talk about self-care, there can be this pushback where it's like, well, if I had time, I would do that. And you're kind of, seems like you're minimizing my problem by just saying, oh, all you got to do is breathe, or all you got to do is, take some bubble baths or whatever. And that's going to somehow solve the problem. So for teachers and support staff who might be kind of thinking along those lines, like they don't really understand what I'm going through, and this and that, a mindfulness practice isn't going to work, or the self-care is not going to work. What are some comments that you have for folks who may be feeling that way, that it's almost like a patronizing thing to suggest those types of things like mindfulness or self-care? We'll go to Techa.
Thanks, Todd. Before I address that, I'd like to just go back to what you said, and it was so the points that you made about the anxiety. There's a new book I was sharing with Carolee and Jelena about a new book that just came out today. Dr. Wendy Suzuki just put out a book called Good Anxiety. And it came out today, and it's talking about how anxiety is a way for us to pay attention to what's going on. It could be a catalyst for change. So when you feel those feelings coming out, like we all said, it's sending a message that there's something that I need to address here, or there's something that's making me feel this way in my body, the sensation, tightening the jaw, my chest gets tight. It's for us to pay attention. It's almost like it's part of our survival, and it's not a bad thing. And we always want to get rid of it. Like, I wish this would go away, but no, if we kind of, like we said, be compassionate, lean into it, We can see, oh, I need to do this, or this is going to lead me to this. But anxiety can be a good thing. And I'm so excited to read the book. I ordered it already, but Good Anxiety, and Dr. Wendy Suzuki is the author of it. But what you said about accessing it, and it's not patronizing. I mean, some people may feel that way when they say, oh, just breathe through it and everything will go away. No, I like to say breathing is something that we do involuntarily. All of us do it. And it's something that we can learn how to do better, and it can be a support for us. You know, not just breathe and it will all go away, but when you practice and you make an intentional effort to come to the breathing and say, you know, I'm just going to take a breath, like Kara with the pause button, with the breathe button, or just having those reminders. You know, mindfulness is available to all of us, and it doesn't matter what religion, or it's a secular practice. You can come to it from any avenue, but just taking time. And we do have time. We have more time than we think. If we have time to binge watch on Netflix, we got time to practice, you know, a mindfulness practice for 5 minutes. So it's available to us. We just have to say, this is for my well-being, and I'm going to do this.
Kara?
I go back to what Jelena shared about investigation, right? And we can't address something if we can't identify it. We can't work with these difficult emotions if we can't recognize that we're in the middle of them. So it's sort of like I mentioned earlier about that perceived versus, you know, real threat. Breathing is what we do, right? This is what keeps us alive. And our breath is connected in deep ways to the different emotions that we are having. So when we are feeling anxious, our breathing is going to reflect that in some way, right? If we're feeling fear, or if we're feeling joyful. With mindfulness of breath, it's making the connection between when I feel calm, right? Or if I feel regulated. I think I probably like that better than calm, because sometimes I'm regulated and not particularly calm. But if I feel like I'm in a state of regulation, it feels this way. If I'm in a state of anxiety or frustration, it feels a different way. I can't work with those emotions if I can't name them, right? So Dan Siegel talks about you got to name it to tame it. And the way that it is so deeply connected with how we take care of ourselves, because I can't address my unhealthy habits if I don't know what they are. So just having that awareness and that connection between the felt sensations in my body and what my mood might be allows me to make a more skillful choice. Because it's like, you know, Techa just said, you know, anxiety is neither good nor bad. It just is, right? None of these emotions in and of themselves are good or bad. They just are. This is just a part of the human experience. When I fight them, then they can become things that cause me great pain. But when I don't even recognize that I'm having them, they can be even more detrimental, because then I'm just, you know, I might be hiding from them. So within the concept of, you know, if I can't take care of myself if I don't know what I need.
Yeah.
So mindfulness helps me touch into what is it that I need right now? And I may not feel like I have time, but the amount of time that I spend ruminating or creating scenarios is time that I could use in so many more skillful ways. So when I recognize that I've gotten lost, that's where it can be really helpful.
All right, great. Thanks, Kara. Jelena, thoughts?
I think often we try things when we are in an overwhelm. right? So when we are in this overwhelm, or coming back to what Carolee was, regulated, and then you have a dysregulated state, which is an overwhelmed state. So we try some of these techniques like breathing. It's like when we are overwhelmed and we try breathing and it's not working, right? It's not working. And what if we tried when we are in a comfort or challenge zone? So, when we are really regulated, trying that and practicing that, and then over time, seeing if that works when we are overwhelmed. When we are in overwhelm, chances are, as you know, as teachers, when we try to work with a student and trying to change any kind of behavior when they are in this regulated state, it's not working. So kind of applying the same thing for our practice. And I recently have been practicing with intention, with a specific word of if only for today. And you can do that if only for this morning, if only for this moment. If only for today, I am to practice breathing. What would that look like? How would that look like for me, right? Can I take a moment, 5 minutes, even 2 minutes, even 3 breaths? Do it as small as you can, even a breath. That's enough for you, for this moment, for today, right? So if only for this moment, if only for today, and investigate how that is.
Thank you, Jelena. I got one final question because we're getting close to 6:30. So we talked about mindfulness. I think we kind of touched on self-care a little bit, and maybe we didn't dive deeply enough into that, but some other ways to manage anxiety. And I'm just going to start off. I'll mention therapy. If you are really struggling with anxiety and it's a regular thing, therapy was wonderful for me. It's been on and off as I've dealt with anxiety flaring up at different stages of my life. Therapy has been a wonderful thing for me. And I think we need to get beyond any kind of stigma or stereotypes about what it means to access mental health services. I highly recommend seeing a therapist, and hopefully everybody out there who's listening has insurance coverage. And there's some great therapists. And if you can't find one in your area, there's online therapy, but I highly recommend therapy. But we'll go round robin and just other things that you feel could help people who might be dealing with some anxiety right now. Techa?
I would say what's been helpful to me during this time is making rest a priority. And when listening to our body. I know we hear it, we know it. Yeah, 8 hours of sleep a night. But this weekend, my body needed it. I slept for 10 hours Saturday night. And it's just amazing what rest can do. I mean, it helps you in so many ways. So I would just say, try to make more time for rest.
Great. Kara?
I think a gratitude practice is really powerful for self-care. And if I can't find things that I feel particularly grateful for, I can look for the small things that bring me delight. And just training my brain to look for, recognize, and as Jelena stated earlier, savor the positives more. The tiniest bit can help set down some new pathways in our brain.
Awesome. Jelena?
Connect to self with rest, with gratitude, connect to others, connect to nature. Connect.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I would also mention, exercise is great. Going on a walk just regularly going on a walk has helped me out tremendously. Eating right, like Techa mentioned, sleep, all those things that we need to do. A therapist that I went to once kind of compared it to like a scale, and we've got all these things weighing down on the side of anxiety. What are the things that we can put on the other side of the scale? And again, we're not fighting it, but what are the things that we can do to help lift our mood, to help us feel better? there's therapy and exercise and eating a healthy diet and drinking enough water and getting enough sleep, all these things that we need to put on that side of helping us feel better. I want to thank you guys so much for being here. It's so good to see all three of you at the same time. Tisha's down, for those who are watching, Techa is down in the Charleston area, and you can reach out to me at toddscholl@gmail.com, and you can connect with us, and I can connect you to Techa. And Kara's up in Spartanburg, and Jelena is in Greenville. So if you are a school or district up in those areas and you want to connect with any one of these folks, you're not going to find better people to talk with about these issues. So I encourage you to reach out to us, and we can connect you with Techa, Kara, and Jelena. Thank you so much for your time. And for those of you who are tuning into this, what I want to say is I love you, and all of us here have so much compassion for what you're doing, and the work that you do is so important, and it's so challenging right now. Take care of yourselves. If there's anything that we can do to support you, please reach out to us. You can find me on Facebook. I'm Todd Andrew Scholl, facebook.com/ Todd Andrew Scholl. Reach out to me, and I'll connect you with Techa, Kara, and Jelena, and some more resources. And we'll read through the comments and get back to everybody. So please comment, and I'll get back to you if you have questions that weren't addressed by us tonight. So thank you, and I wish you well in the rest of the school year. And I really hope that your external conditions continue to will find some type of improvement. But while you're waiting on that to happen, I hope you're able to find some inner stillness and some peace. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And if you want to be a part of our movement at the SCEA to build the schools that our students deserve, we encourage you to go to www.thescea.org to find out more about our association. And thank you again, everybody. Thank you so much.